morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 35th CALLERLAB Convention. Today is Monday, March 17th, St. Patrick's Day, and my late father-in-law's birthday, I might add. For those who aren't Irish, as he always said, for those who aren't Irish, all the rest of the people celebrate my birthday. This is the session on equipment Quirks, or Quirks. I am Bill Hyman, moderator. My good friend Dick Henschel is panelist. Let me just give you a little bit of background on Dick. He started calling in 1975. He joined Hilton Audio while he was in high school in 1967. Scary dates here, guys. Took off 4 years to go into the Air Force, served in the military, returned to Hilton, worked there for a fair number of years, and in 1987 he purchased the company, and he is still calling 3 nights a week. Give Dick a big hand, please. I'm Bill Hyman. I started calling in 1978 in Zurich, Switzerland. Came back to the States after 10 and a half years in Europe in 1980, started teaching mainstream, I guess in the fall of 80, actually at John Kaltenthaler's club in New Jersey. And called actively through 1993 when we moved up to New Hampshire. In 1982, we started Caller's Corner, Square Dance Caller Supply House. In 83, we purchased Supreme Audio. In 87, we purchased Handhurst Tape Service. And in the intervening years, we bought about 5 or 6 other small regional tape services that were going out of business, etc. And in 2005, we sold that company, as most of you know, to Tom and Pam Dillander at Palomino. I stopped actively calling in 1993, actually 94. The business had just gotten too large, and I was just working too many hours a week, and I really couldn't do that anymore. So we have maintained our membership in our local club. We dance. Sometimes, not as often as we'd like to, because we are busy and we do also do travel a lot. And I'm thrilled to share the podium, if somebody can get the door there, thank you. Share the podium with Dick today. What we'd like to do, Dick and I chatted about agenda and things that we'd like to cover. The purpose of this session is equipment quirks, odd things about equipment, using your equipment. Dick will give a presentation. I'm actually just going to make a couple of comments, and Dick and I both believe that the more interesting questions and maybe even answers are going to come out of the audience. As we found at most of these sessions, the audience usually has a much better agenda than we do. So you can think about those things as we're starting to go through this, and just make a note of any questions that you might have. And when Dick has finished his comments and I've made a few comments, we'll open up the floor. Please remember that this is a recorded session, so you must be recognized. Chuck Jaworski is our floor mic guy, and he will bring the wireless microphone over to you. And please speak into the mic, starting with identifying yourself as your name and where you're from. So without further ado, Mr. Dick Henschel.
All right. Thank you very much, Bill. How about a big hand for Bill? Bill has been big part of our whole not only activity but so active in CALLERLAB over the many years. I really appreciate it. And Peggy, of course. Can't forget that. When I was asked to do this one regarding Quirks, just a few quick thoughts. Like Bill said, the main thing is going to be, I think, the give and take back and forth with you folks more than what we come up with here. So it's going to be fairly short on what I have to say. One of the things that qualifies to me as a quirk is usually when a caller is doing something different. Okay, if you work with somebody else and you're not used to their equipment, your possibilities of problems and quirks popping up are a lot higher than if you're working with the same system that you're used to working with day in and day out. So a lot of that is just being properly prepared, having the right type of connectors, knowing what your other equipment is, where to hook in equipment. Along that lines, one of the things I did do is I did a printout for those of you who either use Hilton's or at least if you're calling with a friend that has Hilton's. I have a two-page handout that shows all the proper connections and where you hook in and hook out for recording voice, music, playing back. It shows which connections you need, whether or not you need some sort of a signal booster on the older sets. This information is also on our website. For those that are listening to the tape, you can go to www.hiltonaudio.com and download this same information on our digital page. So a lot of it is being prepared. The other thing, the main thing that has changed over the last few years as far as quirks with equipment is the fact that so many of us now are using laptops, iPods, CD players, all the digital things that are involved. They can create a whole new set of problems. I mean, they work wonderfully, but at the same time, you can have problems. An example is, particularly like with wireless mics and all, if you have a wireless mic on, a lot of the times, if somebody has their cell phone on and they're close to it, you'll get a noise through the wireless will pick that type of thing up. So as a caller, if you're using a wireless mic, good idea to have leave your cell phone off while you're calling so you don't have little buzzes and everything. There are other things that can cause that. A CD player, any digital music device near a wireless receiver can pick it up. I'm sorry if we didn't have enough there, but like I said, that information is available on our website. So to me, that definitely qualifies under Quirks, and it is definitely something that's changed over the last few years. When we weren't using wirelesses as much, when we weren't having digital music sources as much, it was less likely to have little oddball noises and all pop into the sound system. Another thing to be aware of is in certain rooms, certain halls, even your AC line can cause problems if it's got a bad ballast and a fluorescent light system. Some motors that are on refrigerators and everything, if they're developing problems, they can create a dirty AC type of problem that can be transmitted through to your sound system. A lot of the times the best solution for those are using one of the multi-outlet boxes between the AC source in the room and your sound equipment. But make sure you use one that has filtering and spike suppression on it so you're covering both ends. They don't cost much nowadays. You can buy them anywhere. But the multiple outlets that have spike suppression and filtering save lots and lots and lots of problems, so you should be aware of that. A lot of the things we're using have batteries in them. Make sure you have backup batteries.
How much do they cost?
What's that?
The spike protector.
I've seen them in like Circuit City and that type of thing for around under $20, multiple outlet box. But like I said, when you buy one, make sure you buy one that has spike suppression and filtering, because you basically with multiple outlets you have three sources. Some of them don't have anything. Some of them have spike suppression. Some of them have both spike suppression and filtering. For a caller, it's very important for the few dollars extra to get the ones that has both filtering and spike suppression. Like I said, batteries very important. Also, if you're running your iPod or something off of a charge, make sure you're fully charged, obviously, before you go into dances. That can cause. When I first started using a laptop, one of the first times I used my laptop, I was doing my club dance, and typical, somebody comes up and talking to you while you're setting up your equipment. I forgot to plug in the AC adapter. 2 hours later, my computer started doing weird things to me, and somebody in the front square says, "You probably didn't hook it up to the AC." And sure enough, there was a cord sitting right at the back. So just be aware of those type of things. And I think those are the main things I wanted to talk about. The one other thing that has come up recently too is a lot of people are starting. If you're using a laptop, a lot of people are starting to use the external input devices, like or output devices, the little USB sound cards, that type of thing. Personally, I think it's a wonderful idea. I've been using one for a few months myself. You do two things. You usually end up with better sound quality. For one, and number two, you're not using the headphone jack on your laptop, which over the years I know of 3 different people who have had the headphone jack go bad, and now you've got an $800 brick that's not going to do you any good as a caller. So if you use the USB output sound cards, the lovely thing with that is you're not wearing and tearing the jack, and you can always switch back to it if something else goes wrong. And those were my main thoughts, and at this point I want to turn it back to Bill, and we'll go from there.
Thank you very much, Dick. I'd like to stick on the sound card issue for a moment. I'll come up with one name, and Dick has a couple of other names. Through Clark Baker, actually, Tony Oxendine had mentioned that you ought to be aware of the sound card issue, because the sound cards in a lot of notebook computers are really quite mediocre. They're really not made for playing music. They're especially if you have an economy kind of computer. And I think if you've gotten seriously into sound, especially on a desktop, you've actually invested some money in a real quality sound card. It's probably one of the better investments you can make if you're seriously editing music. In a laptop, you really don't have that kind of flexibility inside the machine, so going to an external sound card certainly makes a lot of sense. The one that Tony O has been using is the Zytel. It's Xitel at Zytel.com. No big deal on that. And they describe on their website, they actually give a fair amount of readable technical information, non-engineering type of technical information as to what the card actually does and how it operates. But basically, it bypasses the sound card and gives you the opportunity to use the USB quality output. And I think as we move forward, more and more things are going to have USB outlets on it, such as many of the new cell phones. I know mine do. They have the mini USB or micro. I'm not sure what its proper name is, but it's about a quarter the size of a regular USB. And actually, Peggy and I are designing some new equipment for the fitness industry, and we're actually putting USB jacks and mini USB jacks into that equipment just for the future. We don't have any particular need right now, but we're actually building it onto the circuit board so that we have the flexibility to do that for our wireless system. Microphone, please.
Just wondering what the cost was on the Zytel, if you had approximately.
Yeah, Zytel is a $50 item, $49.95, and maybe if I can just pass it back to Dick, what other brands that you were aware of?
Well, I bought mine over at Fry's Electronics. This is not an advertisement for Fry's, but they have lots of stuff. It's a candy store for anybody that likes computers. I personally use a little one by Turtle Beach, but I don't know if it's any better than any of the other ones. It works fine for me. They tend to vary in price from what I could see, from roughly around $20 up to $80, $90. Basically, like anything in electronics, as you go up in price, you get extra features and maybe a little more sophisticated software on what it'll do for you. The little one I use personally is a small one about the size of the little memory sticks, and I think at Fry's I paid around $20 for it, and it works great and works very good. I'm very happy with it.
Thank you, Dick. I'd really like to shift now to you. Questions that you might have, problems which you've run into. Let's not get into how I sounded the hole at the Dipsy Doodle Festival or things like that. But really, let's try and stick generally with the equipment. And just remember to give your name. Thanks very much.
Hi, Mike Oliveri, Colorado. Dick, on the MA150s, a lot of people are starting to use those now. Unless you're working with a Q or something that needs a turntable. The remote input, there's only one remote input on that system, and several of us have started using like the headphone splitters where you can hook up multiple microphone remotes to that one input. Is there a problem with that? It seems to work okay, or is there a limit to that?
The only limit is the more you hang on to it, the less the volume control range is. Also, it becomes a little more complicated for people because those who aren't using it, and say if Bill and I are calling, well, if I'm going to have remote music control, he's got to have his turned down, or otherwise it's not going to do anything. So either you remind Bill or you kick him during the dance. So I mean that's just the way it works. So, but the range does drop down as you go. So if you have 3 or 4 people on there, the actual volume control range is less. Other than that, it's not a problem, no.
Bear Miller, Denver, Colorado. Also, on that same issue, the ones you buy at Radio Shack or any place else, the splitters don't seem to have the same range that you have initially in it. Whereas if you actually get it from Hilton, a quick plug for Hilton, it seems to be pretty close to the same range as just having the one input. But I've noticed if we buy other splitters, you don't have near the range of the change.
Thank you for the plug, Bear, but it shouldn't make any difference on the range. The biggest problem is that on some of them, it is just, unfortunately, those type of jacks are made all over the world, and they do tend to vary in size, and some of them fit right, some of them don't fit right. That's unfortunately not much we can do about that. But as far as the range, the range shouldn't be any difference. If it is, I don't know why. I don't know why.
Young person right there, back. Yes, please. Your name? On the right. Yeah.
Warren Schultz, Kansas. What would you recommend for a desktop, someone who likes to edit music, and what would be a good program to do that? I mean,
thank you. That's a great question. There are a number of popular programs out there. Some of them are free. Some of them cost a little bit of money. Some of them cost a lot of money. Okay, are really quite pricey. It doesn't mean they're not worth the money. It just means they're quite pricey. Audacity, Audacity, is a program that is very popular. I believe that is still free. Yeah. I know it was free, and that is reasonably popular. At Handhurst, when we created the MP3s, we actually only used Goldwave, GOLDWAVE.com. It's a Canadian company, very sweet little program. Costs was last time I looked at it, it was $55 Canadian, which used to be about $35, $40 American. Now it's probably about $60 American, but it's in the $50 price point. We found it very good. I should mention to you that keystroke for keystroke, all the instructions to operate that program and edit music are on the Dosado website. Or actually on the Handhurst website, dosado.com/music. They're all on there. There's another program. Chris, do you want to answer that, or do you have another question?
I have another question.
Yeah, let me just finish up one. There's also the old generic Cool Edit, and I don't remember the website where it is still available, but the original one, I am told by people, is still out there, the free one. It was bought by Adobe. It's now called Adobe Audition. Last time I looked, it was $270 or $270 odd. There are people who use that. Dick, another comment?
Just mostly PC. Just a real quick comment, not pushing Hilton audio products, but on our website, I did put up a page, because I do the web myself. I had so many requests. I have a page, if you go to our home site, I think it says digital information or something like that is the click. And what I did is I collected all these web addresses, like Bill mentioned. There is a website out there where people who want the original freebie version of Cool Edit, you can still get it. And what I did is I just listed all these various websites that might be of help to somebody. So you can go to that and it's basically a link page to all the other sources. And if anybody has a source, I've asked for anybody who has a source that isn't on there, just send me an email and I'll add it on there, because I've tried to make it to where we've got how to contact for Digital Magic Magician, how to contact for SquareView, how to do Audacity, Fixeater, all the various ones like that. So all of that is kind of collected as a link page on our website.
Chris?
Chris Jensen, Albuquerque, New Mexico. We have had occasions where people have come in and plugged their laptops into a sound system and they get a really bad hum. Do you have comments on that?
The only comment is the most common problem, and it's something I should have mentioned earlier, if your laptop has a 3-prong adapter on the AC line, get a 2-prong cheater and put it on it, because the brick power packs used with digital computers use a switch, what's called a switch mode power supply, and it tends to be very dirty on the ground line. It's fine if you're working on other things, but if you're working in audio, it does create a buzz because it's operating at a higher frequency. Basically, the two-prong cheaters take care of that. The simplest way to find out if that's the problem for you is hook it up to the sound system, just running off your battery. If everything's nice and clean and pretty and everything, then you know it's caused by your power pack. And the simplest way around it is to put a two-prong on there. That is 90% of the time when I have people call up with that problem. That's exactly what it is. So,
Chris, can you just hold the mic? There was a question up front on editing for music editing for Macs. Chris, could you comment on that, please, since I know you're the Mac guru?
Sure. Actually, we're going to be doing editing on a Mac at the Advanced Digital Music session this afternoon. But Audacity runs on a Mac. It's fine. There are other programs. I use Amadeus, which is a shareware program. Again, as they were saying, you can go up in price as far as you want to go. I believe Adobe has a program, not the one you were talking about, but there's another program that I'm blocking on the name on, which is much more expensive, that does sound editing. You could try GarageBand, too, to do certain simple things, and that comes on Macintoshes for free.
Virgil Forbes from Maryland. Actually, I use a number of different cakewalk problems, and there you're getting into pricey software. Dick, on your handout, you don't have any of the MA150 listed. Is there anything we need to know in terms of connectors for the MA150?
The input's a standard 3.5 millimeter. That's the kind of the industry standard nowadays, and that's what we're trying to use as the standard input for any music source. It's the same output off of an iPod or a laptop.
Brent Best, Victoria, British Columbia, Canada. Just to warn you guys, if you come up to Canada, those 3-prong to 2-prong adapters are illegal, and you can't buy them in Canada. So if you're planning on traveling to Canada,
make sure your battery's charged, right?
And if you do that, I'm sure you guys all know this. I won't say it. Make sure that you don't have any screensavers or power savers turned on, because power saving mode will shut things down at the most inappropriate time.
Scott Byers, Sacramento, California. To reiterate and going on the same subject, in Canada, if we can't use the 3-prong ground loop lift, which is the T1, can you use a professional ground lift that will plug in? For example, Behringer has them. Several other. I mean, they're like $29 as opposed to 99 cents. But can you use those, or can you? Those will work fine.
Put you on the mic, okay?
All I meant to indicate is the 3-prong to 2-prong adapters are illegal to sell in Canada. So if you need one, you can't buy them up there. They're illegal to use. If you smuggle it in and use it, no problem. And you can use the ground lifting utilities or ground lifting devices quite happily. And they're allowed in law. It's just they have written in law that those 2-prong to 3-prongs illegal. I have also seen guys that have taken power cords and just pair wire cutters and cut the ground.
Charlie Fagan, Torrance, California. A couple of precautionary measures that I use, a very inexpensive insurance, is underneath my computer I purchased a fanning cooling device. I set the computer on. Keeps things nice and comfortable for the computer. They do generate a lot of heat. Item number 2 is an external USB sound card device. Oh, did you? I'm sorry, I got in here late. I apologize.
Any other questions? Do we have? Oh, yes, please, right up front. Thank you.
Stephanie Langhoff, California. Currently, I just play vinyl records, but I'm looking to move to a computer system. And could you give me your recommendations on, I'm looking for a system that would manage an MP3 library and be able to bring up music and loop the music and possibly bring up a card at the same time. There must be several options for software programs. Could you give me your recommendations and advice on how to proceed?
We can. The one that's been in the market, I believe the longest, is Vic Cedar's program. It's called CSDS, which I can't remember exactly what it stands for, but it's a wonderful system. It is fully integrated with choreographic thing, but it is a digital music management program, but has a large number of other features. To the best of my knowledge, its recent price is around $220. If somebody can correct me, I'd be happy. $200 even. Thank you very much. That's $200 even. There is, and I'll come down the price line, there is SQ MP3 Gold. It's done by Dave Wilson, I believe lives in Sweden. A lot of people in this country are using that program. I think it's priced in Swedish kroner, but I think a recent price was in the high 100s, 180 or something. If somebody has a more recent price, I will take a correction on that. That has been very popular. It's SQ MP3 Gold. There is Digital Music Magician, and that is a program that I actually wrote, and it has a lot of features. It's my only technical business relationship with Square Dancing now, because when I sold the company, I sold all of the assets except for that, because it really wasn't quite finished the way I wanted to do it, and I wanted to finish it up, and it is at that point now. Then there is also the free program out of Germany called SquareView, SQVIEW. It's a very popular program. A lot of people are using that. And there is one other that I'm thinking of that I can't remember the name, and if somebody can help me. There is actually one other. It's European. Yes, it is. And Dick just reminded me, if you go to HiltonAudio.com, still correct? Yeah. There is a page there that has links to all of those programs. You do it. I forgot to mention Digital Music Magician is $149, and that's with lifetime upgrades. I believe the other two programs include the upgrades. I know SQMP3 Gold had one paid upgrade, but I think that when they do improvements, I think that's free, and I'm 99% sure VIX is continuously upgraded, and those are done. And in two of our cases, we deliver those online. Our program is initially delivered it online too. VIX is a CD delivery the first time, and then it's updated online. For example, our program has about 13,500 cue sheets built right into it. None of the programs have music built in. Our program has 77,000 titles, artists, levels, and seasonality, all built right into the program. It's the whole Handhurst database is embedded and encrypted inside the program, so that you don't have to do a lot of typing. And you can name files any way you want, either nameoftune.mp3 or ABC123 or RIL 101 and so forth. And there are many people here who can discuss. I know Chris is an active user of Vic Cedar's program, is an expert on that. Needless to say, I have a program, and there are a number of people who have SquareView with them, and they'd be very happy to show that to you. And does anybody know if there's any session covering any of the programs? Chris, thank you. Sure. Sure. Chuck?
Let me ask a Stone Age question. I still use a turntable. I use an MD player for rounds. I have given up using the cylinders, though. I use records now. But at any rate, on several times in the last year, on very cold days, I'm talking 0 or below, taking my turntable out of a warm basement into a cold car and driving to a dance, setting up the equipment and everything is set up and turned the power on, but no volume, I get a howl, not an even pitch, but a range of sound in both the music and the voice channel. Now, I turned the power off and worked the knobs a little bit. It seemed to help, but at least once I thought I had to cancel the dance, and at the last minute it was normal. So what does that indicate?
Yeah, bringing the cold into warm is the old cold glass of water thing. You got the condensation on it. Basically, probably moisture is forming inside the set on the circuit boards. Typically, when that happens, the water getting in there and collecting with the dust and all that's been on the circuit boards can create. Basically, you've created a whole bunch of resistors and capacitors that aren't supposed to be there, and until it dries, you're going to have problems like that. It tends to be you live in Chicago area, don't you? Yeah. We always run into this type of problem with people that live from the upper part of the United States up through Canada, because it is a moisture problem going from cold to warm. The best solution when I've talked to callers, some of the callers in Canada and all, what they'll do is, rather than putting their amp in the trunk of the car, they'll put it up in the passenger compartments where the heater's on, so that when they bring it into the hall, it's already at a more of a human type temperature that we're used to, rather than freezing.
So put my wife in the back and the turntable in the front?
Now, I did not say that, Chuck. But one quick thing I wanted to add on the last question. Obviously, it's great that Bill. We've been very lucky in square dancing that a lot of people have been willing to put together programs like Vic Cedar and Bill Hyman and Thomas Bernhead in Sweden. But there's also some people that are using the generic software programs like Winamp, and they do work. In fact, Dan Prosser put out a CD on how to use a freebie program like Winamp for your calling. I mention Winamp simply because Winamp has an open architecture, and people have written a lot of freebie add-ons that you can get on Winamp's website if you're interested in that type of thing. They have add-ons that you can turn the Winamp into a DJ system. You can add speed controllers. You can do all kinds of neat things. So Winamp is kind of an unusual freebie music player program that's out there. So it's just one of the other ones you can check out when you're looking at making your choice which one you want to use with your computer.
Further comment, not for the purpose of selling Digital Music Magician, but a source of information. If you go to dosado.com, in the right-hand column, first box, there's an offer of a free demo of DMM, which you can download directly. But the third link down inside that box is a comparison chart. And to the best of my knowledge, it's reasonably up to date. If somebody looks at it and sees that it's not up to date, please email me what the differences are, because I'm happy to keep it correct. But it has the top 3 or 4 programs in it with features that are present, features that are different. There are some qualitative comments in there as to the nature of the feature, because some of them are similar but somewhat different. And all of the programs have some different features. Not all of them cover absolutely everything. They're all somewhat different, and you can just cherry pick out of there the things that are important to you and match that with your interest and skills. Any additional questions? Yes, please.
Mike Oliveri, Denver again. Dick, for you, a couple different things. One, first of all, I'd like to thank you for your dedication to Hilton Audio. The products are just incredible. For the abuse and the handling they go through, the way they hold up is just fantastic. Equipment Quirks. This is a quirk for me, and I don't know if you can answer it for me. AC205, about 10 years old. It's been working great. A couple weeks ago, I had a dance using the computer. Round dance cuers using the turntable. We're on the last round dance of the night, so the turntable's been running for 2.5 hours. She puts her record on. It plays about 3/4 of the record, slows down, and stops. Power's still on, and it's like, okay. Walk over, took the speed control, turned it down, picked the platter up a little bit, put it back down, and it worked fine. It's first time.
My only thought would be that probably the drive wheel is probably just a little bit loose. After the session, I can explain to you. In fact, over at our booth, I can show you how to increase the motor tension, because I'm sure that's all it was. The only other thing it could have happened is if on the bottom of the turntable platter you got a little bit of oil or moisture, and if it wasn't there, then you just need to tighten the motor tension a little bit, and I can show you how to do that.
Elmer Claycomb from Prescott Valley, Arizona. First of all, a comment on one time where I had a old Hilton turntable quit turning. The spindle had simply gotten so dry that it needed lubricating. I actually sent my daughter out to pull the dipstick out of the car, put a drop of oil on it, dropped it back in, ran perfect. Now, the real question...
You might try that, Mike.
That was in Colorado Springs when I did that. The real question is, we keep talking about how to handle the music itself, but how do you get, on all my records, I would like to get the words to the songs in where I can, see them alongside of when I bring up a given piece of music. It's not I don't care anything about what the original figures were, but I need the words to the song.
That's actually, I'm glad you asked that. All of the programs that I mentioned before all have cue sheet readers on them. They all take pretty much the obvious formats of doc files, PDF, HTML, and so forth in the software. I'm sorry, your question?
Well, so what I'm going to have to do is actually type them in some way, or can I scan them in or something like that?
Yes to all of those, plus each of our programs has a varying number of cue sheets built right into them. Ours comes, as a matter of fact, last night I let the computer run because it's a notebook that I hadn't had it loaded in. We have 13,000 plus cue sheets on a limited access website that you can download. I think VIX has, I'm going to guess 7,000 or 6 or whatever. It's a big number anyway. And every month that the Handhurst tape comes out and there's a cue sheet with it, every single one of those are uploaded to the Digital Music Magician website. So we're really trying to keep that up to date. From self-typing point of view, you can type typically a doc file, a Word, Microsoft Word doc file, type it in any format you like to do with choreographic shortcuts like the old Hilton cue cards, the old 3x5 cards. I sort of was born into those cue cards early in my career. You use whatever shorthand you need to do your cue sheets, and that cue sheet pops up on one side, and the music player itself with other controls on it pops up on the other, and you can read the words or catch a quick glance of the taglines as the singing call is progressing. You can also put straight choreographic cue sheets up too. And in the case of our program, you can actually have 2 cue sheets up. You can have one cue sheet that's inside the program, and Alt-Tab outside the program have a second instance of word playing, so that you could actually have different choreographic information at varying levels. For example, an advanced workshop or a challenge or something. In the back, Scott.
Scott Byers, Sacramento, California. Actually, an easy way to do what you want to do. If I'm understanding what you're saying, you don't need the choreographical stuff. You want the words to the actual music. If that's the case, what I do is I just go into Google and I type lyrics, space, the name of the song, hit enter. I get a whole bunch of stuff. Go to that site. I hold my left mouse and I just drag down the stuff and I click and I say copy, and then I go to Notepad, bring it up, put it in, and I'm done. I don't have to type a thing. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Anyway. I have a second question for you. It also includes, it's a 205 for Dick. We have a 205 that when you plug it in, you turn it on, nothing happens, it's dead. You see a light, there's power to it. there's no sound coming out of it. You go up to it, you look at it, and you go, bang, on the top left-hand corner, starts working.
Sounds like you fixed it, Scott.
Yeah.
I didn't even know you were a technician, because it's knowing where to hit it, it seems.
It's layman's terms. Slam it. I don't know. But what could be causing that? Is it a cracked board? What is it that's doing that?
What you're describing is most likely a bad connection. Obviously, somewhere is a connection. And then it's more a matter, is the connection external or internal? A lot of times it's as simple as just a bad speaker connection or something like that. Especially when you say a no sound at all, because no sound at all, also, you got to remember, includes your speaker cord and your speakers. So yeah, that's obvious type problem that can be. The main thing you want to do anytime you're applying troubleshooting techniques, besides the hitting it, is basically just figuring out what is actually causing it. Is it the amplifier? Is it the cord? Is it the speaker? Obviously, if you have two speakers, two cords, that's wonderful. I mean, that helps in your troubleshooting a whole bunch. This particular session isn't on troubleshooting, but we have done in the past sessions on troubleshooting techniques in which we've talked about that quite a bit. And troubleshooting techniques are very important. Every caller and queuer has to have a certain amount of troubleshooting techniques. I mean, I've had a few phone calls over the years, as I'm sure Bill has, where people call up and it doesn't work. Well, it doesn't work doesn't tell me much. Was the power on? Did turntables turn? A lot of times when you get to talking to people, oh yeah, well my microphone did work. Okay, now we're breaking it down, because my background is as an electronics technician in the service, and basically anytime you're doing repair work, you break it down to smaller components. You don't look at the whole. You start off with the whole system, but you say, what parts can I eliminate? And you eliminate speakers, speaker cords, and get down. And then at some point, okay, if it is in the sound system itself, no matter what brand or model it is, if it's an intermittent type problem that hitting it is fixing it, then you have a bad connection problem internally somewhere. Impossible to say until you get into it. That's where a technician earns his money in figuring out where the actual bad connection is.
This is Chris again. Just for the purpose of completion on the lyrics question, VIX program, CSDS, does offer a database not only of cue sheets but also of original lyrics. So you can import that in as well as cue sheets to go with the songs.
Any other questions in the back? Or the front? Right behind you. Chuck, yeah.
Brent Best from Victoria again. Dick knows that I'm a field technician. I look after computers and laptops, and the exact same cold soak problem you're having with 205 happens exceedingly well with laptops. Be very careful of that. Treat that laptop better than you treat your wife. Your wife cannot play the music for you. But in all seriousness, the hard drives in the laptops are very cold sensitive. If you remember on VCRs, they had the dew light that would come off if there's too much moisture in the VCR. We need those on laptops, because we had two guys in Canada that were complaining about it.
So now you're saying the turntable in the front, the laptop in the back seat, and the wife outside the car.
I didn't say that. I'd like to put in a legal disclaimer now. Neither the hotel, CALLERLAB, nor other participants in this room, nor the two people up on the dais are responsible for any or all of the comments coming forth from the audience. Okay, we have enough trouble ourselves without inheriting yours. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions? I think there are a couple of relatively new callers in here, so maybe we do actually have another 10 or 15 minutes left. Maybe if we could just expand the discussion just a little bit outside the framework of the subject itself. I'm sorry, Virgil, did you have a question on the subject?
Yeah, Virgil Forbes, Maryland again. Bill, would you like to talk for a minute as we get more and more new laptops laptops on the market, most of which come loaded with Vista rather than XP for those who are in the Windows mode. Would you like to talk for a moment about the problems that Vista has presented to the existing programs?
Painfully, yes, I would like to talk about that. Any of you involved in computer software in any, let's say, outside the squared inch industry are well aware that Vista has created programming headaches for thousands or tens of thousands of software companies around the world. The UAC, the Universal Account Control, thank you very much. That Universal Account Control is a new technology. To the best of my knowledge, it's completely new, and it behaves in peculiar kinds of ways, and it disallows a lot of things happening in programs. For example, in Digital Music Magician, it disallowed the drag and drop feature because of, as Virgil well knows, he's a user of that. So what we did is we found out the only workaround that we've been able to figure out yet is to disable the UAC, and our instructions in the website give exact directions on that. The only thing disabling the UAC does is it takes you from the current level of Vista security back to XP level security. So if that is an issue for you, then you really shouldn't be using it, quite candidly. I don't know. Are you familiar with Vista and VIX program, CSDS? Not aware of it yet. So I don't know what the compatibility is there. I've just never asked the question. But I know that in ours it did create that one issue only, and we have well over a dozen people now who have disabled that, because we do keep track of who has Vista and who doesn't. And not one of them has had a continuing problem with it, if they were willing to step back security back to XP level. XP, for example, we don't have any Vista machines in our company. We're running 14 computers at the moment, or 13 computers. We only have XP in there. We just bought 4 new computers. None of them have Vista in it. We actually ordered it with XP for a host of reasons. That not just because of that, but there are a host of other reasons that we just couldn't get involved. Get a Mac. Well said, Chris.
Bob Gaunt from Denver. I have Vista Windows on my laptop. I use SquareView. I've had no problems whatsoever.
With Vista?
With Vista.
Thank you very much. Me too. Another person who's used Vista successfully, Brent, also used SquareView successfully with Vista. Excellent. Are there any other questions on, or comments or offerings on the subject itself? Let's maybe just open it up just a little bit. Are there just a quick show of hands, some newer callers in the room, if you've been calling just for a short period of time? We've got one. I don't know. You've been calling a while. Okay. Are there any things that haven't come up in the session so far that are maybe a little bit off of this subject, but you'd like to discuss with all of these skilled people in the room? Anything else? Nothing for the moment. Okay. Sir. Chuck, thank you.
Art Parks from Covina, California. I've noticed, I haven't experienced this myself, but I've seen it recently at festivals as well as dances where wiring seems to the wiring connections, the external wires, have failed in a couple of instances, and I'm wondering. Both like between your amplifier and your speaker, and also between your laptop and your amp, that kind of stuff, and people have had to scramble around and use backup wiring. I'm wondering. It looks like we should be carrying a complete second set of wires for everything. Is that about right?
Yes, basically, yes. If you use a laptop, you better have 2 connector cables, at least. I carry about 3, I think. The other thing, since I had it down here, I'm sorry I forgot to mention it when we first started. Buy quality cables, particularly the one that goes between if you're using a laptop, between the laptop and the sound system. we have found at Hilton Audio that some of the cheaper ones, and there's no way externally you can tell this, unfortunately, some of the cheaper 3.5 millimeter stereo-to-stereo type plugs, which are very common for us now, some of the really cheap ones are not shielded cords, and there's no way you can tell until you start picking up buzzes and all kinds of weird sounds. The quality ones are all shielded ones. So spending an extra $2 or so for a quality cord that's got the gold end connectors on it and that type of thing is well worth it for saving problems. And yes, when you buy one, buy two. Keep the other one for a spare.
Frank Holland, North Carolina. The problem I've been having with buying quality, quote unquote, cables is the only place I can find the 1/8 inch stereo is Radio Shack, and they're trash. They don't last just a short period of time. They're done for. Where do you go to find a quality small cable?
Well, there's a room right across the way here. Yeah, we're not supposed to promote ourselves, right, Bill? But since you mention it, we have some good quality with gold connectors on them that we ran down that I really love. It's the type I use myself, and I've never had, knock on wood, I've never had a single problem with mine since I switched over to those. The other thing you can run into is because we're dealing with a very small connector on the 3.5 millimeter ones, be extra careful about touching the contact points and everything. It does two things. It can cause corrosion on it, and it also, because the contact points on the little 3.0 millimeter that you're plugging into your laptop and your sound system is such a small little connection point, if that happens to be where there's a little grease or dirt off of your hands and all on it, that can cause intermittent problems. So, number one, use good cords, keep the ends clean, and when you're handling them, don't be handling them by the tip connections and all. We used to we can get away with an awful lot with speaker cords. Speaker cords will never give you a problem on a 1/4 inch plug. It's a very solid connection. It's a lot larger surface area where it may contact. Nowadays that we've switched over to where so much of what we're using is very small connectors, it creates another whole level of problems. You just have to be more careful with it. Does anybody else have any comments on cords and all?
Cords really are a problem. And I'll second the motion on. Oh, this is Bruce Nelson, by the way, and I'm the silent partner of a round dance cure, and my first time at the CALLERLAB. I'll second the comment on the Radio Shack stuff. Unfortunately, it's the only source for a lot of us, and I visit them a lot and throw a lot of cords away. About contamination on the ends, there are these spray contact cleaners. Is that of any merit, or is that a dangerous thing to do?
It's one of those type of things. It probably works fine, but I find just a cloth. I always carry a little cloth with me, and just wiping it off with a dry cotton type cloth is going to work fine.
What would you say is the biggest mistake callers make with their equipment? Use of their equipment.
Probably just physical abuse over time, and just I shouldn't say all of us, an awful lot of us will tend to, okay, we got a slight problem starting, and well, we can get along with that, right? And then another little problem. It's just making sure that things are kept up, I think, over time. Just making sure your cords, the things that get the most abuse with with our sound equipment is mic cords, speaker cords that are wound up, unwound, stepped on, pulled, stretched, and all those nasty things that happen to cords. That's why earlier a gentleman was talking about, do we have to have backups? With cords, yes, you have to have backups, because cords are what goes bad more frequently than anything else.
Mike Oliveri, Denver. Another place to find cords, if you've got the facility other than Radio Shack, Quality Cords is a Guitar Center. A lot of the guitar shops will carry the quality cords.
Any pro audio place is going to have a higher level of cords than what you find at Radio Shack. So any place like a Guitar Showcase, any of the pro audio places, the places that sell the bands and that type of things, are going to tend to have a good selection of quality connector cords.
Could I ask you what you recommend for carrying for backup, both hardware backup?
Cords, number one. All of the basic cords that you use, you should have a backup of. I firmly believe that. I do it myself. The other thing too that I think is really important, we haven't mentioned here, it's probably more important for you, Chris, to mention at your session later this afternoon. If somebody switches over to a laptop, I use a laptop. I absolutely love calling with a laptop, but you better darn well have some sort of a backup. If somebody moved from, say, mini disc to a laptop, carrying your mini disc as a backup is a good option. If you moved from records to a laptop and you're still carrying a turntable, have a few records, enough to do a dance. Personally, my personal opinion is the best way to do it is to buy a little MP3 player. They're very inexpensive. And as long as you can figure out for yourself what works on patter records, which is the important thing when you're dealing with an MP3 player, that's a great backup in case you happen to have a problem with your laptop. Pop out the MP3 player. Could somebody give Scott the mic? He had a question. But, well, just going back to Scott, the key thing is having a backup for your music source if you're using a laptop, and there are lots of options. Just make sure you have one.
Scott Byers, Sacramento, California. To reiterate what he says, I carry 3 different sets of cables to do what I need to do and connectors to go with it. So I can plug into just about anything, and I've got 3 ways to do it. For my backup, my wife always brings her computer, and my music is on her computer. Therefore, I have got 2 computers that have that are backup, plus I have a third. I carry my cell phone, and I have done an entire dance twice using my cell phone, because my cell phone is an MP3 player. It's got a little micro SD card in it. So I've used this to do dances. So that's my third backup. So
Pat Herndon, Poway, California. Another source for cables that has worked out real good is a Musician's Friend that's on the web. I bought lots of stuff from them for sound systems for the California Square Council and United Square of America. They are very good quality and reasonable, very good delivery. It's musiciansfriend.com.
Just one quick comment. Scott was talking about using a cell phone. I think that's great. Whatever your backup is, make sure you know how to use it. I happen to have run into a gentleman at the National about a year ago who was planning on using his cell phone, and he was having all kinds of problems because he couldn't figure out how to turn his cell phone off while he was using the music. Whatever technology you're using, make sure you know how to use it. That's my only comment there.
Elmer Claycomb again. Talking about backup things, I really recommend you have a spare microphone and microphone cord hid down in the bottom of things. And it's not always when things go out, but when someone has helped you put things away and didn't put it away in the same place, and the next time you go to a dance, you don't have that particular box with you.
A very frequent problem with helpers with power cords. Power cords are the one thing I often run into. You have helpers come in, if you're not paying attention, they forgot to unplug the power cord out of the wall. Anybody else?
Very good. We're actually we're a minute before our official ending time. I'd like to first of all thank Dick Henschel for his great contribution. Thank you, Dick. And I'd like to thank all of you in the audience. As expected, you came up with brilliant questions and equally brilliant answers. It's great to share the information. Thank you very much. Happy calling. Have a good convention.
Just as a last comment, I want to thank everybody for coming to the session also. I also wanted you to keep in mind, since Bill is kind of semi-retired from the square dance business, it's really wonderful that he can come and share the fantastic knowledge he has. And if you don't know Bill, if you're one of the newer callers, take a few minutes and talk to him and Peggy. They're just fantastic people and have a great history on our activity.